Alright, today we have the Ranger in the shop. It's a 2020 1000 XP. We have got to get the oil changed on this thing. It is a little overdue. Really needs a bath. But it is raining outside today, so not going to do that. But we do got to get the oil changed, go through the service on it. Stick around. Alright, for servicing today, I always keep some pre-mixed antifreeze, Polaris antifreeze on hand. I really shouldn't need it, but better have it not need it. Then for the front differential, it takes this demand drive fluid. I believe it's like 6.8 ounces. We'll check the book just to verify. The AGL, that is for the transmission. The PS4 oil change kit. This kit's what I always use to service the machine with. It does come with 2 quarts of oil plus a 16 ounce. It is all the synthetic 5W50. It does come with a Polaris oil filter. And it comes with a new brass washer to replace. Also comes with this plastic funnel, or the paper funnel. I don't ever use it, but nice that they at least include it. And the other thing that will get changed today, something I normally don't do it every service, but the air filter. It's a good time to get the air filter replaced. So, something you can use for the front differential. I normally use some sort of syringe or a little pump with a hose on it, but a little right ratio cup so you can get the correct ounces that it calls for. On the engine oil, it does call for every 100 hours or 1,000 miles for the 1000 XPs. So I normally do it every 100 hours because I don't get 1,000 miles on the machine in between services. And then here's the AGL for the transmission. It takes 41 ounces, and the front differential takes 6.8, but it does say to fill it to the bottom of the threads on the fill plug, so that's what I always do. So we'll get started with getting this thing up in the air and getting the oil draining out of the engine. All right. Alright, the engine oil plug on this thing is right up here. Right there. That is a 6mm. We'll get that open, and directly behind it is the transmission drain plug. It is a 8mm. So we'll go ahead and get that 6mm busted open and get the oil drain out of this thing. Okay, 6mm. You can use a socket or you can use just an Allen wrench. Already tapped on the plug with a hammer. That tends to help these plugs come to break loose. I did bring this thing up to operating temperature before I drain the oil. What you should do, it helps get some of the contaminants out of the oil. Just be careful because the oil is normally pretty hot after you do that. So we'll let this thing get drained out. And I'll go ahead and drain the transmission fluid once this gets done. I can move my drain pan. And then we'll lower this thing back down. Alright. Alright, this thing's pretty much stopped. Still got a slow drip coming out of it. So I went ahead and cleaned off the drain plug. Just used some brake cleaner. And then we'll put the new brass washer on it and get that thing put back up in there. These things don't have to be real tight. Just tight enough. So, got the new washer, drain plug. Get it on the Allen wrench and put it up in there. Socket would be a little handier, but this works. Okay, that's pretty snug. Now we'll move back to the 8mm on the transmission plug right there. Alright, I forgot to record. Hit the record button. Here's the plug for the transmission, 8mm Allens. I did hit it with a hammer just to help loosen up. Put the Allen up in there, it fit with my little cheater pipe. Got it broke loose and now it's draining. So once this finishes draining, I'll get this plug cleaned up and the engine oil plug, spray them both down with brake clean once I get this one back installed and wipe it all down so there's no residual oil. And then we'll be ready to set this thing down, change oil filter, and filled up with engine oil and transmission oil. Then we can get moved to the front. Alright. Alright, the transmission plug does have an O-ring on it. I do recommend replacing that O-ring when you do that. Make sure there's no metal, a bunch of metal chips or anything on this magnet. Get all that cleaned off. And once it quits dripping, we put it back in. Alright, sorry for the noise. Wind's blowing pretty good and it's raining. But the drip will slow down quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put the drain plug back in. When I install these, I don't ever put the pipe on it. I just get them good and snug. The service manual does tell you the torque spec for the drain plugs. I'll look those up here in just a second. See exactly what they're supposed to be. Alright, on the engine oil plug, the crankcase drain plug, it should be torqued to 12 foot-pounds. And on the transmission drain plug is 10 to 14 foot-pounds. The front differential is 8 to 10 foot-pounds. Okay, everything's back in. Get all the residual. Wiped off everything on the plug. And that's clean. Alright, those two's good. Since we already got the machine up in the air, I think we'll just go ahead and go to the front and get the front differential drained. And probably fill the transmission in the front and then set it down to do the engine oil filter and engine oil. Alright, let's hop around front. Alright, up here at the front, the drain plug is right here, and the fill plug is a little bit of a pain to get to, but you can see it right there. So we'll get the drain pan up here, get that off of there. I'll tell you what size this is in just a second, and then we'll get this one drained and filled back up. Alright, hang on. Alright, that front differential drain plug is also 8mm. So and let's get this thing broke loose. Broke loose. Get the drain pan underneath it. And we'll get the oil drain out of this one. This is the one that takes 6.8 ounces. So not very much oil in the front of this thing. Okay, same as the transmission. It's got a O-ring on it, and it's a magnetic drain plug. The PS4 servicing kit is just for the engine. If you want the O-rings, you're going to have to buy them separately because they're not included in any of the kits. So just FYI. So we'll let this thing finish get draining. I'll get this drain plug cleaned up, and we will get the O-ring changed and get it put back in. Alright, I just got the drain plug clean, and I was going to show you just that little bit of real fine stuff. That's pretty typical and pretty normal on drain plugs. You're mainly just not wanting any metal shavings or big chunks of metal or anything like that, but fine stuff's pretty common, so don't be alarmed if you see any. Alright, it's down to a slow drip. We're gonna just take a grease rag, and there's a little bit of dirt up on this lip. This drain plug goes straight through this bottom pan of this, so there's not a lot of room around it, so a lot of mud and dirt can just get kind of mashed up in the little bit of room that there is. So make sure that's cleaned off, and the surface for the seal is clean, and we're ready to go back in with the plug. So the torque spec on this, I believe, was 8 to 10. You can rewind if you need to. So all those numbers I pulled straight out of the manual. Just if you want to know. I've done these enough that I can get pretty close. I don't need to put a torque wrench on it, but you always should, especially if you're doing it for somebody else, somebody like a customer. Don't shortcut it then. This is my own project, my own machine, so. Alright, let's get it filled back up. Alright, to help out up here to access that plug, that's about the worst one to get to on this machine. I'm going to go ahead and cut the wheels all the way to the right. That'll open up some space up in there to help get with that. And then I'm going to let the machine down a couple feet from the lift. Then after that, I'll let y'all know what size the Allen wrench is for the fill plug, and we'll get that thing out and get it filled back up. All right. All right, got the wheels cut down over to the right and the machine down. Okay, that is also an 8mm for the Allens. So since this is a fill plug and I don't want to contaminate anything, I'm going to go ahead and spray some brake clean around that fill plug and wipe it off, just so we mitigate any dirt that could fall into the fill plug when we get it all broke loose. I'm probably going to go look for a socket with an 8mm Allen for this, just because it is back in here ways. That one's kind of a little bit of a chore to get to, but we'll get it broke loose and get some oil put in it. Alright, before I go traipsing around looking for a socket, I'm going to try this and see if this will just at least break it loose. And it did. Okay. Alright. So the fill plug is out. Almost. Alright. There's the fill plug. It also has an O-ring on it. Check that O-ring out, make sure it's not in any bad shape. Still recommend replacing it. Alright, let's get the oil put up in this thing. Alright, when you buy this oil for the front, it is a 1 quart deal. So the front diff takes 6.8 ounces. That comes out to 4.7 times. So 1 quart should get you at least 4 services on this. So that does help, because all this Polaris fluid is pretty pricey. The transmission, I buy it by the gallon, but I'll do the math on it here in a second. You can still get several services out of a gallon of that. So let's get this thing filled up. Alright, so all I'm going to use for this is a little hand pump with a hose. This is for fluid. So let's get this thing warmed down in there and get it filled up. Almost 7 ounces. It isn't going to take long for oil to be coming out of that. Once it does, we'll pull this out and get the drain plug put in for it. Yep, we are coming out. So it is full. Get the drain plug put back in it, shine light in there, and this one will be done. Alright, rain's coming down pretty good, but should be able to see. Maybe hard to see on camera, but the oil level is right at the bottom of the threads. So front disk's full, we'll get the fill plug in it, and this one will be done with it. After I get this tightened up, I'll spray some brake clean back up in here and clean all the residual off. Okay. Get that snugged up. This thing is a chore to get into. Kind of a pain. Okay. That's snug. We'll get that thing. Get it all sprayed off and cleaned up, and we're ready to move on to the rear. Okay, that looks a lot better. Alright, had to close the door. That wind was coming through pretty hard. And still a lot of background noise because of the rain. So here's the fill plug on the transmission. If you didn't guess already, it is also a 8mm Allen. So we'll get this thing popped out and start getting that AGM fluid put in it. Alright, in that gallon of AGM, it's 128 ounces. So 41 ounces per service. You can get 3 services out of 1 gallon of it. That's just pretty pricey. I want to say it's $60 to $70 a gallon now. It's went up just like everything else has, but you can get multiple services out of it, so that does help. It's also a good place where a socket would probably be beneficial. Okay, just like the other ones. It's got an O-ring on it that will get replaced. This one is not magnetic on this fill plug. That's mainly on your drain plugs. But we'll get this thing pumped full, 41 ounces, or till it's at the bottom of the threads of the fill plug. So, hold up. Alright, to fill this up, I'm going to use the same pump with a hose on it. I'll take this hose off and run some brake cleaner through it. Same with the pump side, and then I'll start pumping. This may take a minute. This gallon's empty. Shouldn't take too much more. New gallon, and should be full in just a second. Pause here and then restart so we can get kind of the real time of how long it took to pump it in. Alright, we've got a new gallon hooked up. I don't think we're too far from being full. we might be there. Nope, we can take a little bit more. Okay, now it's full. Alright, take too awful long, couple 2-3 minutes. Alright, I'll get the new plug, or the plug with the new O-ring on it, installed, and we'll spray some brake cleaner and then clean all that up. Ten to 14 foot-pounds. That's all that's required on that fill plug, or that drain plug. Fill plug's gonna be pretty close, if not the same. Okay, front differential's done. Rear differential is done. Let's get this thing lowered down and we'll get the engine oil filter and engine oil filled up in it. Alright. Alright, to get to the oil filter on this thing, it's right up here back by the exhaust manifold. See it right down there? All dirty. So we'll get it pulled off, get the new one installed, and then pull the fill cap and put our oil in it. And should be good to go. We'll check it with a dipstick. So let's get that thing pulled off of there. I'll show you what I use to reach down in there and get it. So this is a Chenlock brand oil filter pliers. Just fairly small to decent size. This ain't the huge pair that they have, but this pair is very handy for smaller engines like this. And let's get that pulled off. Alright, there's not a lot of good places to set up for recording on this, but I'm reaching underneath the one of the inlet tubes with a pair of pliers, and we'll get it broke loose. You want to make sure when you get this off that the seal is still on the filter, not stuck up on the housing. If it is, you want to get it off before you put the new filter on. Otherwise, you're going to have one awful leak. The seal's still there. I will take a rag and wipe off that mounting face. But that's all there is to getting the oil filter off. Just kind of a pain to get to. And just like any other filter, you're going to put a little oil up on that seal. You'll thank yourself later next time you have to change it. There's the new filter. This does get a little warm when the engine's hot. There's the exhaust manifold's right here. But it's been here long enough, it's cooled down. Okay. So that's good and snug, so we'll get some oil put in it and the service will be done besides changing the air filter. It's usually a little funnel that they include. Let's see how it works. It would be nice if that wind would lay down. It's been raining here almost all week. I'm not really complaining. I need the rain. And a little 16 ounce. 2.5 quarts is what the 1000 XPs take. The little paper funnel actually worked out pretty decent. Okay. So now, if you notice the engine oil dipstick plug, or dipstick for the engine oil, it's right here. It should show a little full, little over full, just because the oil filter does not have anything. It's hard for that camera to pick up on that. It's a little over the full mark. Won't focus. Anyways, I'll start it and I'll check, look around, make sure there's no oil leaking anywhere. And then this is pretty much done. We'll get the air filter changed, which it is located in that little box right there. So let's get it fired up and check for leaks. good idea. After you start it, walk around, which I did, look underneath, make sure nothing's dripping anywhere. That's all there is to doing a basic service on these XP1000s. They're pretty simple, but every 100 hours you need to do it. Take care of your machine, it'll take care of you. Last thing is the air filter. Let's get it replaced. There's the old air filter. It's not awful, but I got a new one, so just we'll go ahead and replace it. Here's the new one. That's all there is to that. Get the lid put back on. Snapped in place. Alright. Well, I know the audio was not very good. I do all this on my cell phone. One of these days I'll get a GoPro. But if you found any of the information beneficial or helpful, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. I've got a few more things that's done on the punch list. It's going to get done to this thing in the future. Like a different tuned ECM, a different primary and secondary clutch. Just because this thing is street legal, I do drive it on the road, but it tops out about 63 all factory, and I know from the factory they dumb these things down quite a bit, so we're going to try to get it where we get another 10 mile an hour out of it would be sufficient, just so I'm not struggling to keep up with highway speeds. Anyways, thanks guys. Alright, now that we've got it all serviced, we do need to go ahead and reset the service hours. And also in the back of your manual, it's a good idea to write down the mileage and everything, which I've got to do for this log. Just because that helps you in the future, you can kind of see where you're at with everything. So, to reset the engine hours for the next service, it's got 461 on it now. Service hours are at 0. Service hours are back at 100. So how I got to that was I held the mode button down. I'll start over. I didn't explain anything while I was going. Okay, service hours are at 0. See the little wrench is flashing at you. You can scroll through, see what the engine is, everything. I've got 2,104 miles on this machine. So service hours are at 0. I'm going to press and hold the mode button, and then another screen's going to pop up in just a second. Options. I'll talk it through here. Service hours, 100 hours. That's the next service we need to do. So we hit, so you can change it. You can change it to 5, turn it off so it ain't bothering you or whatever, but I think it's a good idea to keep it going. I did go over on this one a little bit, so I'll still set it at 100, but I try to, I'm trying to get it to service at the the top of the interval, as in every 400, right at 400, right at 500. Trying to get it to go to that. So set it for 100 for now. Nothing else on here we need to change. So now it's saying our service has 100 hours left on it. So I'll get the current mileage and hours and put it in the book here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll get the date. It's been almost a year since I serviced this thing last. So the mileage is 2104. 2104. And the hours were I believe it was 461, but let's double check. 461. Okay, so we got the date. Current hours, mileage, everything we did to it. The only other thing I need to do, and this is another reason why I film these logs out, it's kind of handy. You can see what I've done every time. Engine oil, front diff, and trans, pretty much every go, except after the initial 25-hour service that was on it. I just did the engine oil. I should have did all of them, but I didn't. But I see here I greased the machine, and I greased it up here. So it's about time to go ahead and grease it again. So I'll probably go ahead and do that while I have it on the lift. There's not a lot of grease certs on this machine, but the drive shaft does have a couple, and then there is a couple at the rear of the machine. So other than that, if you found any of this handy or helpful, give the video a thumbs up. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.